Basketball fans, welcome back to the NBA Playoff Banter podcast. He's Marshall. I'm Chris, and we're here to banter back and forth, discuss, debate, basically just yell at each other, just kidding, about the NBA playoffs. And we're coming fresh off a game 7 between the Clippers and the Mavs. It was a really, quality game for a while. And then, then it wasn't. The fourth quarter was anticlimactic, to say the least, because it really didn't feel that way watching this game down the stretch. I really thought, okay, dude, we are going to close here. But that wasn't the case. Dallas gets knocked off. Luka tried his best. He had 2 separate games in this series where he had 42 points and 14 assists. So what else can you ask for? We were just talking about, thank goodness that it was just really that game and a half or whatever, or it kind of happened earlier than that. So it was almost 2 full games with his neck spasm. But we did talk about how spasms, sometimes backs last longer for a spasm, but you can get over it, and he did. So that was cool, because otherwise there's no way in hell we'd be here in a game 7. And you could also make the argument, had he not got nicked up, maybe they would have closed it out. It's a pretty crazy series when it comes to the first 6 games, no one winning on their home floor. Home floor is an advantage, but still not full capacity, especially for some. It's kind of like half and half. You look at Portland and California, and some of these, sometimes there's like a 10,000 fan difference. It's still not all the way. Maybe it's the matchups too in the first round, but I just saw it was 20-20 straight up road teams. I mean, it was pretty funky. I looked at that. I think, God, the road teams are winning a lot. So we're not quite all the way. Like I said, it could be the matchups too into playing this, but it's always good to be home no matter what on a game 7, though. We know that, just the comforts of sleeping in your own bed and shooting on your own rim. But we are going to start, like I said, with the Clippers getting the job done against the Mavericks. I don't think I've ever said the Mavericks. And then we'll talk a little bit about game 1 between Brooklyn and Milwaukee. That was a competitive game until it wasn't. It looked kind of funky with Durant getting his 4th fall. I thought, okay, here it goes. But they just took over, and then Harden, too, was out. So that was kind of crazy, too. So we're going to kind of close down some of these series. Obviously, a handful of days ago now, man, it's already been Thursday since the Suns knocked the Lakers out of the playoffs. It's the first time LeBron James lost a first-round series, which made a lot of people happy. I know that, especially the Jordan fanboys. But, it's kind of a cool list. Dallas is out now, but Dallas was the last team to win it that was still left, 2011. But when you look at some of these names, the Bucks, 1971. The Hawks, 1958. I'll say that again. The Hawks, 1958. The Suns, Nets, Jazz, Nuggets, Clippers have never won a championship. So in with the new, out with the old is the theme in this here NBA playoffs. So we're going to break down some of the games that have happened early, some series that have yet to tip off. But yeah, man, it's been an interesting. And what's up with Atlanta? I mean, what the hell's going on? It didn't matter if the Knicks had the most people in the crowd in the whole country, 19,000, I think. They were going ape shit. It didn't matter. It did not matter one bit. But if this is your first time listening to the NBA Playoff Banter podcast, welcome. It streams live right here on blogtalkradio.com/Rope-A-Dope Radio. However, you don't have to go to Blog Talk and Rope-A-Dope and download the show there or listen to the browser if you don't want to. You can find this here show under the platform at Apple Podcasts. You can also find the Rope-A-Dope Radio podcast on iHeartRadio, Player FM, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spreaker, really across the board. We're also part of the Grueling Truth Sports Podcast Network, which can be found in a whole lot of places. While you're at it, why don't you head on over to thegruelingtruth.com. It's basketball, football, boxing, baseball, hockey, everything in between. And one more thing, if you're thinking about cutting the cord, or you have, like a lot of people during the pandemic, and you're not happy, though, I got something for you. It's called AT&T TV. The plans start as low as $69.99 a month. Simple pricing, no hidden fees, no annual contract. You can stream it anywhere on any device. The cloud DVR is available. And if you sign up for the choice package, it gives you a free year of HBO Max. That's AT&T TV. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and bring in my co-host Marshall into the frame. We obviously are going to start with this series, with the Clippers in Dallas. Really strange, Marshall. The first 6 games is the first time in history of the NBA playoffs that through 6 games of a series, neither team had won on their home floor.
Well, yeah, and we were just talking about that before, and I had mentioned how I'm a Nationals baseball fan, and that when they won the World Series 2 years ago, they won in Houston in Game 7, and that was the first, I believe, series in American sports where a home team lost every single game. So the Nationals won 4 in Houston, Houston won 3 in D.C. So it's something you really normally don't ever see, because it's rare to have, 2 things happen the past 2 years that have literally never occurred in baseball, basketball, or hockey history, for that matter. I guess you never have best of 7 football. But yeah, that was odd. Obviously you could say, well, there's not a full stadium, but hell, there were fans there. And I know Dallas was having one of the biggest sport crowds in America this year, so they were cheering for Luka. They did their part. But yeah, the biggest thing or takeaway to me is the fact that I hope Luka stays healthy, because he is a player who, if he stays on the track he is going to be really good for the sport. Like, he's one of the best players in all of basketball. I would argue probably a top 5 player, and the dude's like 22. Like, you would not watch that game and see what he did in the series. I know they lost, but like, he's a generational talent almost. So I hope that he continues to build, just because the sport needs people like him. Like, he's appears to be a good person. Like, he just has that kind of likable look to him. Like, it's awesome. Like, you don't get a lot of guys like him. You have guys like, Ja Morant and Luka. Like, the sport, it's a good time for some younger athletes to just be involved in the NBA. And I actually heard an interesting stat, and it was the fact that the best player on a team that's won a title has not been younger than 27 in the past, 30 years. So, and when I first started, I'm like, but when you think, if you were to go back and look in the past, 30 years, we're going back to the 80s, Chris.
Well, and especially when you had to usually stay 3 or 4 years too.
True.
That helps.
You're right. Yeah, it obviously, back in the day.
But even like Kobe, that'll be the first thing people think of. No, but Kobe, Shaq was the best player,
Yeah, but it just kind of, the point was you kind of have to go through your growing pains. And with what this kid's doing, it's like, dude,
you said 27?
I believe, yeah, it's 27.
So let's put that at about 25 now. That's probably going to be the new stat, just because you can come out earlier now.
Sure. Yeah. So
that says a lot.
It does. It does. It goes to show just how, in the past 3 years, you normally have to go through bumps and bruises, which these players we're talking about are, But yeah, to talk about the series more than just Luka, he did all he could. Obviously, they need to find help. And, in the past 2 episodes we've done on our podcast, I have mentioned how I think, the Lakers bench, they need help. Portland, they need a big. Dallas, they need help. Like, clearly, I'm not the only genius in our country who realizes that, hey, these teams need help. Like, obviously, there's people getting paid probably really comfortable 6 figures, at least, to help these teams out. But when you just watch these games, you're like, well, dude, I'm watching Lillard. Like, Lillard needs help. Luka is relying on Porzingis, and that's not enough. So you watch some of these really, really top tier players struggle, And it came back to bite them because even though the Clippers have had their fair share of moments of choking in the past, they just had more help. Like, I know that Paul George gets ripped on a ton, and he deserved it last year. But if we're looking
Yeah, that
just
was his
off,
worst playoff year ever. He'll
yeah,
never have that kind of year or that playoff.
and I mean, you could probably, people might want to laugh at me, but if we're talking just like numbers, like Paul George is probably a better number 2 as of now for Luka than who Luka has to turn to, which last year again it would have been comical, but it's like, and then you have like Morris, who, and I hate those dudes, but both those brothers, if you put them in playoff games,
I love them. I absolutely
they're
love them.
they're
if they were on Golden State, you'd be like, these guys are just solid human beings. They're good human beings.
They were
They're
Kansas
just solid
boys.
guys. I mean, you were just talking good about Chris Paul not long ago, so let's keep it going.
I went into our podcast and actually edited that comment out. I was going to tell you that. I forgot.
Yeah, right. Meanwhile, you saw him kick Davis's leg during the game. I fucking love that move. It was like, oh, dude, that was so obvious. Go ahead, though.
But hey, credit to the Clippers. They got it done. That could have been a moment where they could have had a relapse again. I did see one absolutely preposterous effing tweet, and it was some NBA writer, I don't know who, but it said Ty Lue 9-2 in Game 7 games. What a hell of a head coach! It's like, really, there's all. If you were a new sport fan or didn't know the context, that you're like, oh, yeah, dude, going to work tomorrow. Ty Lue, man, he's 9-2 in Game 7s. He must be a hell of a coach. It's like, no, he might be, but you know what?
I don't think he's a bad coach, though.
No.
I mean,
no, but
he's good with egos and a bunch of them,
Yeah,
so.
yeah. But that 9-2, that number, that is a very actually incredible coaching number. But
not all stats are made equal, right?
Yeah, true. That guy named LeBron
in the East, it helps.
This will be my last part. I'll throw it to you to wrap this one up.
Can we talk about the Clippers a little bit or no?
Well, that's what I was gonna do.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, good.
So Luka got a lot of the praise, and again, it was because he was trying to do all he could. Jesus. But if you did watch Game 6, there's that dude who we've heard from stories that he's kind of a diva. Like he's one of those guys that.
Oh, but Luka's not a diva on the court.
Oh. No, I'm not. No, Luka's an awful diva. I'm just saying with those reports of him making like the team playing late all the time. Like Kawhi's one of those guys where he knows he's the best player on the team, and he just kind of that's how he carries himself.
Yeah, at least he gets on the plane. Jordan didn't even get on the plane.
True. Well, I'm not. No, I'm saying there's plenty of guys that do that. But he's not Kawhi's not the only diva in the NBA.
Taking a long time to give some compliment to the Clippers. Come on.
But if you did watch Game 6, Kawhi's like, oh, dude, yeah, everyone giving Luka props. I'm going to just bust him and bust the whole team and carry myself for a game. Because that Game 6 was a pretty close game. I would say there actually, it was kind of a fun series to watch overall, Chris, because there was lots of runs back and forth in almost every game. But in Game 6, Kawhi said, dude, screw this. I'm taking this game over. I mean, this is a guy who in Game 3 started out 9 for 9. I think finished was 11 of 12 at some point. In Game 6 said, screw it. I'm tired of this. We're wrapping this shit up. We're not losing in Dallas. So, again, he maybe doesn't get all the exposure at times because he is, appears to be a pretty quiet person to himself. But the dude is still, right there as a top 5 player in basketball. And he stepped up when he had to. He made the plays. You know that he's always going to give you a defensive effort. That's a lot of guys we've spoke about on this podcast who are star players. Are not elite defenders, but you've never really heard Kawhi get trashed defensively. He normally carries his weight on both sides of the court. He got the job done. Paul George did not have a relapse of last year where he was getting made fun of with all sorts of nicknames. I think he had one really bad game. I think he actually was really shitty in Game 6. But that was just kind of a one-game sample size. So, hey, Kawhi stepped up. George stepped up. They have the better role players. They clearly have a coach that's elite at Game 7.
Much better coach.
Yeah. So, But hey, they got the W. Now they're moving on to take on the Utah Jazz. So that was a fun series. I'm sure I doubt many people had it going to 7. If you did make that bet, I'm sure it cashed out pretty well because I know the Clippers were a not over the top, but a strong favorite in Vegas when it started. So maybe a couple people cashed in on the Mavs winning a
What were
series
they
game
when they
bet
were
for them.
two?
But
2-0 never even came up. You notice that? They were down 2-0 in the series. How many times do you come back from 2-0 in the NBA playoffs? Not many, right? Not many at all.
Especially when you lose both at home.
Exactly. A crazy stat here. The Mavericks regular season and playoffs came, it's after 2 games still. They came in to game 3, 30-0 when leading after the first quarter from the regular season in that little sample size of the playoffs. That was the best in the NBA. They lost game 3 and game 6. And now they're 30-3 when having the lead after the first quarter. Those 3 games, game 3, game 6, game 7, were the only ones they lost with that, with the lead in the first quarter. It was kind of a strange series in general. And Luka, just like game 6, went off early and then kind of fell off a little bit. Only had 6 points from all third quarter and into the fourth. So some of his buckets late were kind of garbage-ish. But still, I mean, he came out. He had like 28 and 7 assists or something at half. I mean, he was going off. The Clippers were up 70-62. Hardaway kind of got, like, it was a weird non-contact leg jammy. He was like 1 of 8, but then he came back a little stronger, got some buckets. But, Leonard down the stretch, he started out good, but really just the first handful of minutes. Then Luka kind of took over. But then next thing you know, you look down, Leonard had 24 points at that same point I was telling you about. So Leonard got a little more aggressive, was passing the ball really well. Clippers shot the lights out. There was a point where it was like a 14-2 or 14-3 rebounding advantage, and I know they even said it on the broadcast. I know they were shooting the lights out, but still, like, they were getting out rebound like crazy. But yeah, they found a way not to do it. Yeah, this is from a couple days ago, June 4th. Road teams 20-20 in the NBA playoffs so far. I just saw that stat. That's freaking crazy. So they got the job done, and especially tougher. First of all, you had Luka going off, and it down 2-zip. So you basically gave up at that point for a while until you won game 6. Technically you gave up your home court when you're down 2-zip because they have 3 games, 3 out of the next 4 at home. So that was pretty damn big. And maybe this gets them over the hump and they make this run because now they have some confidence, even if most people thought that they would win this. Luka, this year I did like how he at least started to address some of the things he gets a little emotional to the refs, and it gets in his head for a little bit because he's still on that play. And I liked how he addressed it this year. And I could tell down the stretch every time I watched the game, it was less and less. And so he was more like channeling his anger. Also his body. I noticed sometimes in fourth quarters he starts to wear down a little bit because the guy's doing so goddamn much for his team. But he's still young. He's still got a little baby fat on him. I'm not saying Jokic, right? I'm not saying that. But remember that pandemic when he came back from that pandemic and he looked like a new dude. I'm not saying Luka has that kind of body fat. But once he gets I'm not saying he's not in shape. But when you look at his body, he could tone up. And a lot of guys take until they're like 24 or 25 to get their body completely ready. So it's scary is my point. He can get physically better. I just love the way he gets his shots. He's real clever. He's fundamentally sound. And like I said, he just finds a way to get his shots. His rainbow 3 reminds me of Scotty Thurman from Arkansas. Yeah, dude, that was a fun series. I thought it'd be a pretty fun series. Once it was 2-0, it was like, last time we did our pod, his neck was, had spasms, so we really didn't know what was going to go on there. But they got the job done. So kudos to him, and they move on. We'll talk about. Well, actually, let's go right into that as we go. We're going to kind of blend recap and predictions. Now, obviously, they do get a day off, and it starts Tuesday now. So they kind of hit right to it, and they're traveling not far, though, because it's just to Utah. Game 1, Tuesday night, Clippers at the Jazz. What's your take on this series?
Okay, so as I've said before, and I'm not changing my words here because I know whenever I do, you call me out because you're a co-host that listens. I think that this year the Jazz and the Suns have been the most two consistent teams in the whole year of the NBA. Maybe not the most star talented players, but they've been the most consistent teams the whole season.
Definitely.
And I guess
I'd throw Philly in there too, but yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
especially in the West.
Give a slight edge to the West. Yes, exactly, my friend. And you maybe could have said Denver, but obviously when the Murray injury hit, that dropped the record down a little bit. So I say that because I think the Jazz are the more complete team. I think that offensively, when the Jazz are clicking, they're gonna be able to outscore people, and the Clippers would have issues with that. The Jazz obviously did that to the T when they scored 47 points in the first quarter against Memphis in their final game. Like, I get that that's like an effing amazement. I always listen to the there's a Memphis, Chris Vernon. He's like an analyst TV guy for the Grizzlies, and he does a daily podcast. I always listen to him, and he was like, I was watching the game, and the Jazz didn't miss. He said they started out shooting 8 of 10 threes in the first quarter. And he's like, dude, you could put a regular NBA guy in the gym with no one there, and they normally don't make 8 out of 10. So this Jazz team, when hot, can be the best offense in basketball. And not because they dribble and drive and kick and they have all sorts of – there's no, like, handles like Kyrie or driving like LeBron or shoots like Curry. But as a team, you collectively have a ton of good three-point shooters. And you got Gobert, who – really isn't an offensive factor. I mean, he can definitely throw down alley-oops. I think his hands are actually pretty awful. But just for offense, when they click, Chris, they can outshoot you to death because Mitchell can drive and do his own thing as an individual. He kind of has his he can shoot from wherever. And that Clarkson, good three-point shooter. Bogdanovich, good three-point shooter. That Niang off the bench, good three-point shooter. And there is the other white guy with Clarkson, Ingles, good three-point shooter. So, and Conley as well. So you legit got 6 guys that can shoot the three.
Both these teams had the most guys over 38% or 40%, I think, in history.
Yeah. So I mean, and obviously the Clippers can shoot the three too. I give the Jazz a bit of an edge, but I just think I give the edge there because Clippers will have home court. The Jazz will have home court, and they don't give a shit about COVID laws apparently because their place is packed.
That's true. They were packed. Yep, that's a good call.
Hopefully their fans are not quite over the top and saying some really ignorant racist stuff. I mean, I don't know that stuff still exists, but obviously, hopefully there's no people trashing Kawhi's parents or stuff like that, like they did with John Morant's dad. But anyways, yeah, I think the Jazz will win the series. I think they're just a more complete team, but Kawhi will be the best player on the court. And a lot of times when you break down NBA playoff series, you can do X's and O's a lot, but the best player on the court matters a lot of the time for predicting a winner. And Kawhi obviously beats everyone aimed for the Jazz, but those 6 guys aimed for the Jazz are all pretty good players. I would say are a stronger core than the Clippers. And again, you have home court too. And it could be one of those things where it kind of is a 3-point fest, and whichever team shoots the 3 better is going to win. I would just vote towards the Jazz just because I think they've been a more consistent team all year. And when you have 2 pretty evenly matched up teams, Chris, I would just vote towards the one who's more consistent. I know that it appears the Clippers have had some issues with Zubac kind of on and off from what I've heard just from watching games.
Yeah,
And
so much so they
maybe
had to get him out of the starting lineup. They got to put
so
him back in now.
I guess one thing that will be interesting to see is how they decide to match up with Gobert and Favors and how the big man battle goes. Because even though that's not the main emphasis for Utah's offense, obviously Gobert is a big part of the defense, and obviously the Clippers need someone to guard him. So the big man part would be, I would say, shooting threes is part one of the series of mighty importance, and the Zubac / someone factor for guarding Gobert
Morris,
could
say
matter
his
because
name, Morris.
yeah, that
Morris
KU dude,
Senior.
yeah, that KU guy, yeah, we'll see.
Oh,
So
I forgot. Now I get it.
yeah,
Man, what took me so long?
uh-huh.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. He's
So yeah, so I will say I'll take Jazz and six. I think the Jazz pull it off, but it should be I think it should be a fun series with tons and tons of points. Bet the overs.
and I'm gonna go Jazz in 7. Who is that big old dude that Dallas puts in for like 5 minutes? I can't remember his name.
Boban.
Boban. It should be like Zordoff or he sounds like some. I'm not gonna get into that actually. I don't want to disgrace the guy, but
He's a great actor in John Wick.
Right. They were having like Leonard on him sometimes, in on big sometimes too off of switches or just in general when they were trying to kind of let him rest a little bit on defense. And I wonder if that's who's going to be on him for a little bit. But the Zubac, I bet you we see Zubac back in the lineup is my guess. Ibaka is just I think he's finally faded, so we're not even talking about him for that reason. Another thing, obviously Rondo needs to be playoff Rondo. No, Beverly though. Beverly is he's not healthy right now. They had to put Jackson in the last 3 games in the starting lineup, I think it was. Yeah, he's 4 games. He started 4 games, and Beverly is not the guy he was. I guess you could say maybe right before the bubble, because to me that swarming type guy who could bring the ball up a little bit or have the ball in his hand. They don't really need as much with Paul and Leonard like that, but he's a key guy that is not being a key guy, I guess you could say. I think that's going to hurt him too, unless he could get fresh and I just think they need a guy that can just be a stopper the whole game. But I'm going to go 7 just because it's not like they don't have 2 capable. Their stars both can defend really well, so they do have, they're capable, but are they capable for the whole game or good chunk of the game? That's what, that's the tough part. So yeah, I'm with you, but I'm going to go one more game. They got to do it at home to get the job done. Let's go back to Saturday, Marshall, and you just muted yourself unless you did that on purpose. Saturday, Nets, Bucks. Now, right off the bat, Harden goes off with an injury, that same hamstring, I believe. Actually, I don't know if it's the same one, but he did hurt his hamstring before, and now, seconds into the game, literally not even a minute went off the clock, and they had to call a timeout. And you're like, uh-oh, he could just tell. So you wonder long term, does that? Well, that obviously hurts their chances long term. Now, this was kind of interesting because the Bucks were settling for threes in game 1 in just outside shots in general. We've heard that one before. And Brooklyn, you could say a lot about some of about Kyrie and Harden and their style of game, but they move the ball wonderfully at times, dude. It is a thing to see right now. And they all know that they're here, so it seems like they're getting along enough. But to me, Milwaukee was like right there. They kind of got the Nets kind of stretched it out sometime in the second quarter. Milwaukee wasn't playing great, but they were still down by like only 2-4, something like that. And then they kind of stretched it out. They used Milwaukee used like a 13-4 run to get it down to 63-61. You could see the Nets started getting into transition, extending their lead. And with about 90 seconds left, Durant gets a fourth fall. And I'm like, uh-oh. But it was a takeover in the fourth, and it was just like, forget it. It doesn't matter. Coming off that series, now obviously we already saw game one, Marshall, right? We already saw it. So we're not going to act like we didn't, okay? But, there was a lot of knee-jerk stuff going around, and maybe it's not knee-jerk, maybe it is. We'll see. They were on the road. And after that, the way they just disregarded Miami in that series and the way they played as a team, and they had all those little extra parts we talked about. Will this make a difference and all that? And it did. It totally did in that series. Here we are. You're down 1-0. You're on the road, so that's not crazy. You didn't play your best ball. How do you see this one playing out? Because you started to see the national media go, dude, this is the Eastern Conference Finals. And I kind of still feel like that because I don't know about Embiid from day to day. But what were your thoughts after? Did you see a lot of after that Miami series is what I'm saying, the way they were dominant? Did you see what I saw with the media saying, hey, dude, the Bucks can win this. Bucks in 6, Bucks in 7, that type of thing.
So I think going into the series, I think literally in my mind it was a 50-50. I think Milwaukee, as we said before, is a more complete team. But that the Nets have just a more talented team, which is not breaking news to anyone at all. My biggest oh shit factor was what you literally just said, was Harden played for 42 seconds and you lost the game.
That's not a lot, is it?
No. I'm not good at math.
He got a rebound, though. He did get a rebound. He was minus two, dude. That's pretty good.
So how is it that you lose a game and you could argue, and I'm not going to do this shit because I don't want to go down this road, but you could argue their best player. Okay, I'm using bunny ears.
This year, Harden was their best player.
Yeah. So I don't want people to talk about whatever. Okay, their ball control player didn't play the whole game. So you don't win that one. Like, that's where I'm like, okay, this is not a good sign. Like, that's one of the things where you gotta be like, dude, if we couldn't beat them without Harden, like, what are we gonna do if he comes back? Or, maybe he doesn't. Okay, he tweets answering him, but still, you lost him without him. So, yeah, I don't know. I would be concerned as a Milwaukee fan. Yes, you did get your monkey off the back. You beat the Heat. You showed that you're a team that's changing up your game plan. Like, you're doing different defensive styles and everything. Like, defending pick and rolls different. Like, they're doing different stuff. Their coach in Budenholzer showing that, hey, I can adjust and adapt, which he's not always done. That was always kind of been the big knock on him, was he coaches the regular season the same day was the postseason, which can get him in trouble. So, hey, like, first series, step one in the right direction. But now step two, now you really got to make a whole new game plan defensively, because you're playing a team that we've not quite seen a team like this. Like, I love my Golden State boys, but the offensive game plans.
Yeah, I was going to say, offensively, we've never seen a team like this.
No, because Clay and Steph are a different breed that could spot up and hit threes. And you had a guy like Bogut and like Iguodala and Draymond, who were like, it was kind of like a little more of a traditional basketball offense, Chris, where, Clay and Steph hit threes and the rest of the guys kind of play defense and kind of pass the ball around. Like, this Nets team is massively different, because I think the luckiest guy in the world for the NBA right now is Joe Harris. The dude's already been an elite 3-point shooter, and all he does now is just find an open spot and chill there and sit there.
Hey, I'll sit in this corner here, watch these guys dribble and pass, and then if they get me, they get me.
because Kyrie, and again, not a fan of him, but whatever, I definitely respect him. Many people
Yeah.
say he's the best dribbler in NBA history. So you have he can get open and kick. So Joe Harrison there. KD just, and I'm definitely not a fan of him, but he is tough to guard just because how he can shoot over the top people, and he has a great jump shot, especially for his height. Like,
He's one of the
you,
toughest guys to ever guard in the league.
yes, yeah. So you have so many different pieces to defend. So now if you're Milwaukee, and this isn't even ripping Budenholzer, but you got to really come up with a new plan. And the last part I'll say is the fact that it surprised me of what you said of how Milwaukee really settled for threes.
6 for 30. 6 for 30.
But what blows my mind is the fact that the whole year, the big knock we heard on, I almost said New Jersey, Kerry Kittle's New Jersey Nets. The Brooklyn Nets was the fact that they don't have a big. That their big that's their weakness. So why would you not want to have a guy like Antetokounmpo drive to the lane? You know, and I know that Brook Lopez is not a traditional center at all, by far. If you watch him play, he's pretty much a 3-point guy. But you have Brook Lopez, you have Chris Middleton, you have Giannis. Like, dude, use your muscle and go down low and hurt them. Like, you know, I'm not saying that that's got to be your whole offense, but if
dude, Blake had 18 points and 14 boards and shot 4 of 9 from 3 and played 35 minutes. I was just like, huh? But can he keep that up for the rest of the playoffs? So not that exact number, but True. Can he keep even 35 minutes up? You know, I wonder.
Well, I just think if you're Milwaukee, like, dude, if your advantage is the bigger body team, like, you got to take advantage of that. And hell, 6 of 30 on threes, it ain't clicking. Now, but that's a whole rant for a different day. Like, the 3-point shot due to Stephen Clay really has taken over offensive teams in college, high school, and pro. I mean, there's teams that just live and die by it, which, you know, I don't get, but whatever. Anyways, I don't think they're going to get swept. Like, I don't think it's going to be a complete beatdown, but with Harden not playing, you still losing, I think that's a sign of we got to adapt and adjust quickly, or we're going to be down 0-2 and we're going to be scratching our heads as to what to do. But in fairness, we've never seen the Nets team play in the playoffs, and we've never had to guard the arguably best dribbler in NBA history with one of the tallest best shooters of all time. Like, the game plan isn't easy. And even though Giannis gets a lot of love and Middleton does too, and all these guys do, like, and I know they brought in, I always get confused as who's the guy, is it Bledsoe now, or is it Bledsoe or the, not Bledsoe, is it Bledsoe now?
Bledsoe's gone.
Who's the guy they brought in instead of him?
They brought in what the hell? Now I'm losing it. It's the freaking from New Orleans, dude.
I know. Drew Holiday.
Holiday, yeah.
Yeah. So those guys got to really step up defensively and just find a way. Like, maybe you have if Harden's out, because I'm guessing probably will be for game 2. If you tweak your hammy, which has been hurt already, maybe you have the idea of, hey, let's let KD beat us and contain everyone else, or let's let Kyrie beat us. Like, maybe you have the approach of they have 2 studs. Let's let one own us and try to stop the other people. I don't know. Again, I realize I'm a freaking high school coach. I don't know shit, but maybe that's an idea of, you know, because you've seen teams do that where it's like, okay, well, we're gonna let LeBron beat us tonight, or, you know, back in the day it would have been, all right, well, let's let Jordan beat us and try. You know, maybe that's an idea that you can see them do. Like, okay, tonight let's stop KD and the best we can, and let Kyrie beat us and see if that helps. Because if you kind of go three-point shooting attack mode against them and it doesn't work out, it's going to be a short series, Chris.
Well, like you said, no Harden, got to win the game. Durant gets his 4th foul in the 3rd quarter, got to win the game. They can't take over the game in the 4th quarter with those 2 factors. It's just, and I actually, when I'm watching the game, I thought they're going to win this game, dude, because they're only down by 2, they're only down by 4, and they're not playing good. So I was like, and that's what's keeping me on the fence right now of not picking the Bucks, but wondering if it can get to 6 to 7, because I'm just like, man, you know, like, they were in the game for quite a while.
Did you? Because I know you saw that game more than me. did they have kind of like that Miami Heat wall of like, hey, Giannis, we'll let you have the ball, but when you come to the lane, we're gonna have like three bodies on you? Was there kind of like a force field around the lane to keep Giannis from penetrating, or was
Not
he maybe just
not
not
to
as
that
aggressive?
not to that extent, but they
Okay,
definitely. I think anytime you try to do that with them anyway, you know what I mean. So,
sure.
um, and they were definitely, saying, go ahead, take the three, no doubt. And Griffith wasn't up on his ass or nothing like that, you know what I mean? So, um, but that's the thing. It's like, I guess anyone can create a wall, but it leaves so many openings too when you have that. So they were trying to do some of that, and it obviously worked in a lot of ways, but you still, I don't know, man. It just seems like watching the game, there was times where it didn't need to be that way. But when you're missing shots,
Well,
boom,
hell,
you're in
6 of 30.
transition, and
Yeah.
it's on. The transition that hurt them. So I'm gonna say, man, a lot of it depends on game two, obviously. But I'm gonna say, God, I want my gut, and a lot of people are already saying in five, Brooklyn, but I don't know. Something tells me about that game. They didn't play their best game, and they had a chance to be in it. But it was without Harden. But Harden's not going to play in the next game. There's no way
No,
they got a
dude.
hamstring.
If you tweaked your hammy,
So
he's out for a couple. You would assume.
I'm going to say six. I'll give them 2 games. But I got Brooklyn in six.
I'll
5 or 6. I don't
I'll
know. That's tough
copy
to
and
say.
paste that with you there. I think they make a couple of adjustments. But yeah, I mean, as you said, they didn't play their great game. They had a chance to win, but you lost without Harden. So, yeah, bigger picture though, if you're the Brooklyn, I mean, you really need that guy back. But that hamstring, like that happens so often, even in baseball too, where a guy takes time
Mm-hmm.
off, then first time he runs down to first base, you see him pull
Yep.
up, and it's like, oh shit. But that's an injury where, and
Especially in
these teams
basketball, dude.
have, yeah, these teams have the best trainers in the world, and you're like, okay, dude, we've done your test, like you're good to go. But that's one of those things you really can't control until you're like, oh crap, I just popped it again. So he could easily be out for the series. I'm not
That's the
trying to
thing
be
with
like medical,
hamstrings. There
but
aren't like little spasms. You know what I mean? Like
no,
it is a real deal. It's
it's
tough, dude.
probably like a week or, well, hell, he was out for quite a few weeks without it. I know it's playoff
Long
times, it's
time. Yeah.
different, but he could be done for this series easily, which is a huge
Yeah.
benefit for Milwaukee. But yeah, well, so I was gonna say the five. I'm with you. I think they might be able to scrape some way, but I'll stay Brooklyn in six. And if you're a Nets fan, you got to hope that you do the rehab treatment and hope that Harden's back, because you would assume you would need him to continue to have a successful playoff run.
Speaking of day to day, we don't know, but we do know. It seemed like we weren't going to know. And Beebe hurt his meniscus, sprained it, minor sprain. It's not something that shuts down the season by any stretch of the imagination. You could play with it, but it can, spark up on you. You never know. He did miss. He played 11 minutes and then got pulled and then missed the closeout game. I just kind of assumed that he wouldn't play. The first quarter, 42-27. I mean, they just jumped on him. Now, to Philly's credit, and honestly, I was working for a chunk of this game, so I'm thinking, they don't have Embiid, and I'm just looking at the score real quick, and I look at, there's Embiid right there, and they had Embiid. I mean, he had 39 points, so he was definitely there, and they didn't get a ton from their bench, but besides Green, they got a variety of, quality minutes from people. So it's one of those things that Atlanta just started crazy. Speaking of quality, they got it all over the place too. They got it from a lot of people today, not just Young. They almost gave the damn game up, though. I'll say that, and maybe that's just a young, inexperienced squad together. But they were up like 107-88 with 8:23 left, and they almost gave the game up. With like 10 seconds left, they even had a turnover right underneath the bucket. Simmons dunked it, got down by 2. So it got shaky down the end. But once again, Atlanta comes out, wins a game on the road. And this team, like we talk about, Dallas had a horrible start. Washington had a horrible start. Atlanta was, just knocking at the door to try to get into the playoffs, and then they made a run, obviously. And Collins was on the chopping block. They were going to tweak their team. What are they going to do in the offseason? They made a coaching change. Like, the whole thing looked bad, relatively speaking. But now it looks really good. And all of a sudden, you're like, dude, you lost game one at home. Like, and Embiid played great. What the hell's going on with this Atlanta squad, dude? I mean, they completely dominated the Knicks. And Philly's been solid all year. They were the other consistent team we talked about. But, and like I said, they almost gave up the game, sure. But it seemed like there was just no looking back for quite a long time once they got up 42-27. And this Atlanta team, dude, they're getting it from a lot of angles because Young's coming with his.
What's really confusing, and why I paused there for a second, and I know that stats can be misleading because there's plenty of people that think Gobert is this ultimate great defender, and you could say stats that prove it and stats that don't. So I get that stats are not everything nowadays with as many stats that are available. But what blows my mind for this game, Chris, is the plus minus, which normally is a pretty accurate NBA stat or pretty telling. Every single Hawks starter was a minus, and Bogdanovich was even at 0. The Hawks bench.
That's that fourth quarter.
Okay, Gallinari plus 11. Okonongu plus 13. Snell plus 9. Lou Williams plus 16. Herter plus 8. But then you look at Philly's bench, and their whole bench was all minus. So even though there may have been a collapse where they took their foot off the pedal, you got to give a lot of credit to the Hawks bench. Because for better or worse, you had 5 guys. Well, Snell only played 4 minutes. But you had 4 guys who played over double-digit minutes that all gave you productivity. Which, as we've seen from a team like Portland, who literally had no one off the bench that could guard Jokic or make shots for Dame, or Dallas, who literally was on a 7-man rotation. Hell, the fact that Atlanta played 10 players today, and I guess you could say 9 because, again, Snell played 4 minutes. Like, that alone to me, Chris, is a massive advantage. That shows that they're kind of a complete team. Or they've bought into the system with their coach. Or when you get your minutes, you're going to be productive. Because, and again, like you said, they did maybe take the foot pedal, but still, your bench
look at the starting lineup, though, beyond the plus-minus, though, besides Hill. I mean, they produced in a lot of ways,
They did. I'm just saying it's nice to have a bench that can support you because a lot of teams in the NBA don't have that. Hell, a lot of coaches in the NBA don't even play more than 7 to 8 guys.
Especially when you get the playoffs.
Yeah, play. So whatever the mojo they have, and again, plus minus, but there clearly something's going in the right direction now. You took down the Knicks, which was a 50-50 series. I'm sure the national media might favor New York, but you had momentum. You won in Madison Square Garden. You're a younger team. You're riding high. They're literally playing with house's money, Chris. What do the Hawks have to lose? You're expected to lose the series. You have a young team. You have a star who kind of has that swagger to himself that makes people hate him or love him. Like you're just riding high. And for Philly, as you said, dude, there was really no reason to lose this game. Again, 3-point shooting, as you mentioned, hurt. Atlanta made 23s. Philadelphia made 10. But it was just a game where you're expected to win. And Philly's always kind of had a pretty good reputation for being like a long and like quick and tall, good defensive team. Well, a good, long, tall defensive team doesn't give up 42 points in the first quarter of a game one of a series. Like, yeah, I know that Atlanta was lights out, but dude, you gotta try to like do something, So hey, credit to the Hawks. They're on a roll. I would be willing to. Now I know I did say that I didn't think Memphis would lose at home to the Jazz, and they did 3 times, twice. But you would assume the way they're playing, Chris, Atlanta's going to be bouncing. So they have that swagger going on at home. So if you're Philly, you gotta get your ducks back in the pond, and you want one game 2 because you would assume Atlanta ain't getting swept at home. I would strongly feel confident saying that Atlanta Hawks will not get swept at home. So if you're Philly, okay, you screw up game one, it's not over, but you can't F up game two. And also your superstar is playing on a partially torn calf, so he's not probably going to be 100% the whole series. So yeah, you got to get it back together. And again, you've had a reputation of being a good defensive team. You gave up a $128 at home, and pretty much you gave up
42 right away too. Like that's not quite establishing the defense.
74 points in the first half. I know that they shot the ball well, but 74, I can get a team's high give up 60. Nowadays NBA 60s, that's fair. But 74, like dude, your shit wasn't together, or they just came in and took the series a little bit cocky, and they're like, dude, we got this. It's the Hawks, and they got punched in the mouth.
They definitely got punched in the mouth, man. And it was a while ago now, but I did want to talk really quick. That Dame, to get the three to go to overtime, you get the three to go to the extra overtime. Looking at it like 55, 10 assists, 12, the most threes in the playoffs, 12 of 17, one turnover that whole time, 9 of 10. 55-10, like we glossed over that, and I didn't want to do that. I had to bring that back up real quick. That shit was nuts. Now, so who are we picking? Is Philly still strong? I'll admit, we've seen game one now. I'll admit I was gonna pick Philly. But because of how well the Hawks are playing, I did think it would be a game 7. You know what? Fuck it. I'm going to stick to my pick because I was going to pick that. I'll just say that before game 1. I'm a little loosey-goosey now in the Embiid thing. I wouldn't put any money on it at all because the Embiid thing too. But I'm just going to pick them. Philly in 7. But what's your pick?
I'm going to copy and paste you. I think Philly in 7. I think that this Hawks team is riding high. But, hell, if you can't get past this team, like, dude, Philly, they've had plenty of years of being hyped up, having good regular seasons. You got to find a way to beat the Hawks. If not, like I don't know, I got nothing. You got
and Philly only needs like 2,000 people in the crowd. They'll be loud as fuck anyway. So you can't, we can't say that, right?
No, they got to find a way to win the damn series. I don't know, or else you might start looking at retweeting a little bit because I don't know. Yeah, you got Tobias Harris, you got Embiid, you got Simmons, you got the long, lanky team that's supposed to be really good. But, yeah, you got punched in the mouth. So I expect them to bounce back game 2 and win that game. And then you best be folks going down to Atlanta because they've been on a roll there too. So, you do.
Game 4, whatever. Okay, so I want to reiterate. Dallas is out, so they don't count in this. 76ers last championship, 1983. Bucks, 1971 with Kareem. Hawks 1958. I couldn't even fucking tell you who was on the team. So Suns, Nets, Jazz, Nuggets, Clippers never won a freaking title. Another stat. This is the first NBA Finals without LeBron or Curry since 2010. Lakers Celtics, the rematch between, from the 2008. Dude, that is crazy. It's refreshing. It's fun. It's a variety of things. But when you start to add up Curry and LeBron, you're like, yeah, I suppose, dude, since 2011. Oh, my God. It really adds up for, that long of, basically a decade. But it is a fresh one. They still could get L.A. For television, viewership. They still could get Brooklyn. A lot of people think it's going to be Brooklyn. So the NBA is probably – they're mad, of course, with the Lakers going out. But they're probably like, you know what? We could still possibly get L.A. in here in the West Coast. Utah's been a popular team of late. Lakers will be trying to – they'll probably want the Nets to win or whoever comes out of there if it is the Clippers, right? So they'll be watching. So I say all this because now we get to our last series, which is, a pretty damn good series on paper, even without Murray. Obviously, the trade they made helps. The fact that they had a guy that's really coming to his own as a number 2 now without Murray. I'm talking about Denver. But the Suns get the job done and they move on. And of course, the two top guys, Booker, Paul, Paul is healthier than he was after that speaking of spasms or whatever the hell that was. You could start to see his mid-range game, especially in that closeout game. It was like, okay, Paul's starting to get back now. I could see it. He's starting to be able to do. Maybe he can't still shoot the three that well, but his mid-range games was tight when they needed it. When LA started making that little run back in the third and fourth, Chris Paul put a stop to that. So yes, I mean Booker. We know Booker was going off. He's now a little bit more alert on defense. I'd say a lot more in a sense than he was in previous years. Paul is obviously, we could talk about Bridges. We mentioned him, Payne off the bench, Crowder, but Ayton, dude, this guy. I've always kind of been. I'm not totally sure on him, but the way he played, especially in the early part of this series. I mean, I was taken back with some of these numbers early on, like I said, in this series. And when you look at it, 22 and 10, 22 and 11, even 14. Okay, 14, he shot a high percentage anyway, 75, but he had 17 boards. I'd like to see the guy. He got 3 blocks in the whole series. I'd like to see more of that. But, it is what it is. He's not like he's tall. He's 250, but he really came into his own when they needed him to, too, because we talked about this big-ass lineup that the Lakers went with last year, and obviously with Drummond, I mean, they got big-ass lineup. So, we could talk. I mean, obviously Chris Paul is the most important piece to this team this year as far as a fresh new piece, right? We know that. But Booker obviously is number one. But Ayton, dude, he's really coming to his own just in time, Marshall.
Yeah, and he's a guy that has just kind of been labeled as just like one of those average bigs, kind of like, I'm not going to say someone in the Sacramento Kings draft because that's a massive slap in the face. But the Kings always seem to draft like a big every year from like top-notch school.
Yeah,
and
sure.
he so he's kind of having that, well, is he going to be an elite center? Is he going to be okay? Or is it just going to be another guy? Kind of like the Suns had Alex Lynn forever. And I was kind of like the guy, but he was like, yeah, he's a big and he can score, but he's not like really that good. And even a good buddy of mine's like, dude, Aiden, like, what's he do for me? And I was like, but I started looking at the box scores, and his box scores throughout the whole year, pretty much every game I watched was like 18-13, 18-13. Well, if you're averaging 18 and 13, you got the best record in basketball, or one of the top 2 records. Like, you can't be that bad. And I think part of it is he's just growing too, so I think he's developed, but he's definitely a really important piece because they have the perimeter game set. Like, you got
Yes.
Booker has really transformed, becoming a more elite player. Chris Paul with the ball is just one of the better point guards and team leaders in the game. Jay Crowder, him and Booker in that Lakers elimination game said, "F it, dude, we're going home now. Like, let's let LeBron and Caruso go and golf," because I think they hit 9 threes in the first quarter, those two combined.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, he had 33 in the first half or some shit. Like, it was crazy.
So, I just think, but Ayton's definitely that piece because, again, I'm naming all these perimeter players. Now you have a guy like Ayton, and again, in a position that seems more and more nowadays that less and less people play near the basket. Like, a lot of teams have centers, but as I mentioned, like Brook Lopez in Milwaukee, he's a center for the Bucks, but he normally spots them and shoots threes. Jokic would be considered maybe a center, but he's a perimeter guy. Like, so many bigs, and I guess you could maybe say Jokic is a forward. That could maybe be a bad example, but a lot of taller.
And he gets the ball under the rim a fair amount too.
You're right. But a lot of taller players in the league now are not back to the basket guys, and that's something Ayton actually does have in his skill. His post game isn't that bad, which, again, you could say is also an advantage nowadays because not a lot of teams have guys that do that, and that does put you in a different scenario. And again, when
we
you have
saw
guys,
it with AD when they did get him the ball And not just this year, but overall last year too, when they actually got the ball when he was posted up, and how much of a difference that made,
Yeah, it's just
It's not
a
many of them.
different.
You're right.
Yeah, it's a
Not
different
many.
look. I mean, you got a guy like that Valanciunas for Grizzlies. He's an old school center. I mean, that's the first one that jumps out to my mind. Nurkic kind of is for Portland, but I mean, they're
There's just not
really
many. There's really not
no,
many
yeah,
that
there
post
ain't.
up.
So yeah, and again, and I'll tie into this one now, and I think that I think a lot of media people are going back and forth on this series. I'll tell you that Vegas has Phoenix has minus 170, which means you have to bet $170 to win 100 that they win the series. So Vegas is showing their hand, saying, "Hey, we believe Phoenix is a better team," and I do too. I think that the biggest issue for Denver is that your defense is not that good. Like you did beat
Yeah.
Portland, but Portland was having a one-man show take you to a near game 7. And yes, you could say, okay, Denver did have a lot of flashy moments offensively with Jokic, my Mizzou guy, Porter, like that dude's a stud. Monte Morris is playing out of his damn mind.
Morris, man. I was going to say, let's mention Morris, too,
I've
because
always loved that guy.
He started taking control when they needed to. It was interesting.
I love that dude in Iowa State. And I'm just the dude's he had like a 9-to-1 turnover ratio and assist turnover ratio in college. Like the dude can play ball. But I just think the biggest issue I think is the fact that the Suns do play defense and they do score. And Denver scores and doesn't play a great amount of defense. And we sadly don't get to watch what will be this year's maybe Booker against Murray. Last year was Murray against Mitchell.
Yeah.
So this year it could have been like a fun Booker-Murray series. We don't get that. So I just think when you have a team that plays great offense versus a great offense, but then a team that plays pretty great defense against no defense, I just don't see how Denver wins the series. I mean, if Murray's in, I think it's a different story. But I just think that Denver, again, was – but no, I'll say this. Lillard is a freak of nature himself. Like, what he did that series is not something that's easy to defend, period. But as a team, defensively, Denver is not that good.
Right.
Porter Jr., who's become an elite scorer for someone in his time frame in the NBA, can really score, but his defensive IQ is hideous. And they're one of their guards that I can't think of his damn name, but they have that guard who just is an okay guard, but he is defensive bad too. So yeah, I think I'm going to take Suns in 5. I'll be a little aggressive here, but I just think that the defensive issue is going to bite Denver. I think Jokic steals one, but I'll take the Suns in 5. I don't see how Denver outplays them and outscores them. Yeah, I don't see it happening that way.
Do you think after the Lakers win, do you think that they're now the favorite to go to the West or to go to the finals out of the West, or do you think it's still up in the air? Because a lot of people are saying, even though the Lakers were not full strength or whatever, it's still a mind thing. It's still a dude, we did it, and we think of Atlanta being a young team ready to go. Well, shit, this is a pretty young team ready to go. What do you think about that? Because I think that's a good question. Because I'm not ready. Had that been straight up Lakers with LeBron, not having gone right into the playoffs and having to play, and then obviously losing AD, I think that I would have been yes for sure. But I'm still like, I don't know. That's a great question though, because it feels like it. On Thursday night, it felt like the Suns were going to get out of the West, didn't it?
I think that. Well, yeah, I just picked the Suns to win, and the Suns swept the Jazz 3-0. So I'm going to stick to my guns and say yes. I think the Suns would be the betting favorite. It wouldn't be a massive amount. I mean, again, you got Jokic could try to go off, and the Jazz clearly.
We don't need to break down the.
Yeah.
I'm just asking kind of out loud. Like it's kind of it felt like that Thursday night is what I'm saying. It's like I realize that wasn't full strength Lakers, but still, there's a mentality in your head. They were down 2-1. They
True.
were down 2-1, and to me that means a lot because
Yes.
that game 3 felt like the series was over. And maybe if AD played in the second half, they would have got up through one. Who the fuck knows? But there's something about it. Here's something to think about. In the 3 games against Phoenix and Denver, against Denver, Aiden went for 22. He averaged 22 points and 12 boards, and Jokic averaged 25, 13, and 8 assists, which actually is just barely like the rebounds are up, but the rest is like just a little lower. You know what I mean? Like, so he basically did what he does, but Aiden came up and had 22 and 12 in those 3 games. Now, obviously, it does us no good to break down those 3 games because of Murray, and even Denver's a different team if you think about it now, who they, after making that trade. So, I do have them. There's something about Denver where they're different. They're built differently deep, especially with that trade now. You're right. They're not great defensive, but I'll go 6 Suns and 6, just because. And
Sure.
by the way, usually they do. Is it conference finals or is it conference finals when they do the MVP? Or is it the first? Yeah, it's conference finals, doesn't it?
The start.
First game.
Or
isn't it usually the first game of the conference finals? Someone's getting it.
I thought I remember. Didn't they once give Curry the MVP like game 1 of the finals against LeBron? Or am I crazy? Or is it?
I think you're crazy. Because usually it's the conference finals.
Okay.
Of it. Now it's not out because Dirk won it the year before that they won the championship. Remember, and they didn't make the conference finals, but. Either way, long story short, when I added up, they won the first round. We both picked Portland to win because no Murray, 7 games. And when I added up, and when I look at how many more minutes, he played like 900 or something more minutes. He played more minutes than Embiid. When I added up, Jokic is the MVP. We've been talking about it a lot. I'm picking Jokic for the MVP. I've been teeter-tottering, but that's who I'm going with. Why don't you get us out of here, sir?
All right. Well, we have plenty of more good basketball to enjoy. That's I would say one of the more entertaining first rounds. Obviously, we had a couple of series that went a little bit shorter than we thought, but it was actually a pretty entertaining first round compared to many other years where it's like, oh, dude, here's our picks. All right, let's talk second round, or let's talk who's going somewhere.
Compared to all but one, really. Remember that one where we had like 3 or 4, 7? But other than that, yeah.
Yes, you're right. So in the past 10 years, it's been one of the better first rounds. And part of it is simply the fact that you didn't shoe in LeBron, didn't shoe in Curry. And I don't give a shit about ratings. Like, sure, the ratings are helpful, but the ratings don't affect a regular person like you and I who have no financial bearing of who's in the finals. And LeBron, I'm not even going to go down that road. The dude he lost the series, whatever. Anyways, but yeah, so it is nice to see. My main point is it's nice to see different teams. As you mentioned, half the teams left in the playoffs haven't even ever won a title. Like, it's cool just to see different people.
Now.
Yeah. Because there's a chance next year it could be LeBron again, or maybe, if Klay Thompson's back, who knows, whatever. But why not see a couple of different teams mixed up for a year? And a couple of these teams have young teams that could be doing it next year too.
They're not going anywhere.
No, I know. So it should be a really fun second round. It's a great time of the year for sports. You're enjoying the hot weather. It's clearly hot as hell across the whole country right now. So get yourself a beer, get yourself a drink, get some pizza, watch some basketball. I know a couple of series start actually tomorrow night. So there's no basketball this evening, but we got basketball throughout the whole week. So tune in, enjoy. And Chris and I'll be back next week as these series start to grow and develop. The Western Conference should be a lot of fun. I don't think we're gonna see high scoring games nonetheless. And the East right now, with injuries and Atlanta being up 1-0, is going to be a fun one to talk about too. So until then, thanks for the support. Have a great time. Enjoy your summer. The boys are out tonight. Peace.